I stood in the middle of an empty lot in the outskirts of Los Angeles, penniless, with no phone and no wallet. My husband's black car had just disappeared around the bend, leaving a lingering haze of dust in the pale orange afternoon sun. At the time, I didn't know that. This was only the beginning. I didn't know that the man I had loved for 15 years had calculated every step to completely destroy me, not just to abandon me, but to erase me from his life. And what was worse, the only person I still trusted, my own flesh and blood sister, was about to stab me in the back with a fatal blow. But there was something else I couldn't have possibly foreseen. The blind woman sitting in the shadows at that deserted bus stop, the one who would save me in just a few minutes, she wasn't blind at all. And everything that followed, every detail, every fall, every tear, was a game of chess. A game of chess everyone was playing, except for me. My name is Serena Blake, and this is the story of how I lost everything in a single day, then won back everything in a way I never thought I was capable of. It all started one seemingly ordinary morning in Beverly Hills, 6 weeks before the day I stood at that bus stop. The penthouse we rented overlooked sunny Sunset Boulevard, just like every other morning. Jamal, my husband, sat at the dining table, sipping coffee, his white shirt impeccably ironed, the scent of Creed Aventus cologne faintly present in the air. But his face was no longer the face of the man I once loved. "Serena, I need another $75,000. He said it lightly, as if asking for a little more sugar. Calm, cold, as if $75,000 were pocket change. My heart pounded. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. "Jamal, I don't understand. You said $75,000? Where will we get it? We already owe the bank nearly $400,000. My salary at the tech company is barely enough to cover the interest and our monthly food expenses. I work for an AI logistics startup in downtown LA, founded by a group of entrepreneurs of color. The income is not bad, but it can't possibly patch the debt hole Jamal is digging." He looked up. His eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth. "I'm not asking for your opinion, Serena. I'm telling you, the contract is signed. The money is needed before the end of today." I gasped. "A contract? For what now? Is it for your Malibu villa again?" "That's right. The seaside villa he called his project of the century. An 8-bedroom mansion looking straight out at the Pacific Ocean, where he hoped to impress the tech investors. That house had swallowed everything. Our savings, bank loans, all our credit cards, and now some shady debts from who knows where. I'm building a career, Serena. You don't understand. Your brain is only just capable of doing those minor tasks at that company. I need to be seen. I need to be respected. When the big shots in the investment world come to visit, they need to see class, not those little vegetable patches you plant at the church." A clean cut, straight through my self-respect. I trembled, my voice choked. "Those vegetable patches at the church are at least keeping this family fed, Jamal." He jumped up, his face flushed, his hand slamming down on the table, nearly spilling the coffee cup. "I am sick of you constantly complaining. You're dragging me down. I'll handle this myself. Now get dressed. We have someone to meet. Meet who?" "Someone at the office. We need to sign some papers, but don't bring anything with you. Leave your wallet and phone behind." His voice was razor sharp. "This meeting is a secret." I should have asked more questions. I should have realized something was wrong, but after 15 years of marriage, Jamal had worn down my will to the bone. He made me believe I understood nothing about business, that my only role was to support the family while he climbed to the upper echelons of power. I nodded, silently putting on my jacket, and I walked out the door. That was the stupidest decision of my life. The sedan glided silently. I didn't know where I was being taken, only that Los Angeles was receding behind the dark window glass. Instead of a central mansion, the car turned onto a narrow road, then stopped before a towering iron gate. The gate opened smoothly, as if swallowing the sound. Inside was an isolated compound. Dark brick villa, cameras everywhere, the lawn cut perfectly flat, cold, enclosed, precise. No sign of warmth, only security and power. Malik opened the door. "You may leave," the elderly woman said concisely. "I'll call when I need you." The house was even colder inside. White-lit corridors, gleaming stone floors, expensive but impersonal furnishings. No photos, no memories. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my back straight. She stood opposite me, silent, and then slowly removed her dark glasses. Those eyes were not blind. They were piercing, sharp, and intelligent. The gaze of someone who had never known defeat. "I am Beatrice Langston," she said, her voice steady as a command. "And you are Serena Blake, 38, working at an AI startup downtown. Your husband, Jamal Blake, 42, is trying to climb the ladder at a tech investment firm. Am I correct?" I simply nodded. "Drink this." She handed me a glass of water. "You'll need the strength." "Why did you pretend to be blind?" I asked. "Because it's convenient," she offered a thin smile. "People aren't afraid of a blind person. They say things in front of a blind person they would never say in front of a sighted one. Today, I heard enough." She sat down, her voice as even as a surgical scalpel. "Your husband is a parasite, petty, ambitious, and ignorant. He borrows money to show off, and now he wants to push you out of the only apartment in your name. I wasn't wrong in my guess." I nodded. The West Hollywood apartment was my parents' legacy, the only thing that truly belonged to me. "I will help," she said succinctly. "Clothes, a phone, a lawyer, everything. We will take back your apartment, your dignity, and your life, but not for free. You will owe me. When the time comes, I will collect." I looked straight into her eyes. I knew I was facing a formidable, unforgiving force, but when the person who swore to love me abandoned me by the side of the road, this hand, cold as it was the only one offered. "I agree," I said hoarsely. She showed no surprise, as if she had known all along, and at that exact moment, the memory at the bus stop flashed. Jamal hadn't left immediately. His car had hidden around the bend, waiting to see me panic. He didn't just abandon me, he wanted to see me desperate. Gripping the glass of water until my knuckles turned white, I felt rage replace humiliation. Ms. Langston tilted her head, her voice light yet sharp. "Good. Hatred is a stronger fuel than self-pity. Learn to use it." She rang a bell. A woman in a gray dress entered. "Estelle, take Serena to the guest suite. Let her shower, change, size 8. Bring dinner." My private guest suite was impeccably clean. The bright bathroom was fully stocked with hair products suitable for my natural hair. On the bed, new clothes were neatly folded. Dark pants, a beige sweater, crisp underwear. Luxurious, refined, and impersonal. The warm water washed away the dust, but not the stain of shame. When I returned, dinner was ready. Malik stood still in the corner. Next to Ms. Langston was a man in his late 50s, impeccably vested, wearing thin-rimmed glasses. "This is Elias Thorne, my lawyer," she introduced. He gave a slight nod, his voice cold and precise. "The matter of abandonment on the highway is difficult to prove. No witnesses, no cameras. He'll claim it was an argument. Forget it. Focus on the assets. The West Hollywood apartment is an inheritance, outside marital property division. But if he dared to leave you there, he's prepared the next step. We must act immediately." "What do I need to do?" I asked. Ms. Langston pushed a new phone towards me. "Clean device, only 2 numbers saved, mine and Mr. Thorne's. Now go home for what? To see what he has done. Don't speculate. Look straight at it and understand the enemy you're about to face." Malik drove me. In West Hollywood, he stopped the car, his gaze neutral. "I will wait." I walked up the stairs. 3rd floor, the brown leather-wrapped door, my home, my parents' home. I inserted the key. It wouldn't turn. I tried the spare key. Same thing. The lock only accepted half the key before jamming. The lock had been changed. I stood silently in the hallway, my hands trembling. Love, dignity, my home, all locked away, and my old keys, useless from now on. Before that, the night everything collapsed. We drove far out towards the Santa Clarita Valley. I asked a few times, but Jamal only motioned for silence, his face drawn. The car turned onto an isolated road, stopping in front of an old bus stop. "Get out." "Why?" "Get out." I stepped out. A gust of wind hit me. I thought he would get out too. Number. He looked at me through the window, offering an unfamiliar, cruel smile. "There's no one waiting to sign anything, Serena. There is only you and your problem. If you don't want to help me, you're on your own." He floored the gas pedal. The car vanished around the bend. I stood frozen, alone, with no wallet, no phone, nothing. I cried until I ran out of breath, then noticed an older woman in the dark corner wearing a coat that was old but elegant. Dark glasses, a cane in her hand. "Don't cry," she said hoarsely. "Tears won't save anything." She asked a short question, accurately guessing the thing I couldn't name. Then she said, "My driver is coming soon. Just say you are my granddaughter. Get in the car, get out of here, and let your husband regret abandoning you right next to the wealthiest woman in the city." "Who is that, ma'am?" She only smiled. "You have two choices. Stay here and wait for nightfall, or get into the car and change your life." A black sedan glided into the stop. The gloved man opened the door. "Miss Langston, the car is ready." "Wait, Malik." "My granddaughter is coming with me today." I didn't think further. The fear of the dark was greater than the fear of the unknown. I stepped into the car. The door closed, blocking the sound of the wind. The car rolled smoothly, and everything began to take a turn, but not the way I had ever imagined. The sedan glided smoothly along the winding roads leading toward the city center. I sat pressed against the window, looking out. Streetlights were beginning to turn on. The scenery receded behind us, blurring like a dream. The woman sitting next to me, Dr. Beatrice Langston, remained silent the entire way. She rested her cane on her lap, her hands lightly clasped, her head tilted slightly as if listening to music only she could hear. There was nothing about her that suggested visual impairment, only a stillness that was unsettling. Every time the car passed over a pothole or took a sharp turn, she didn't sway. It was as if she knew every inch of the road. Not knowing what to say, I stayed quiet. My heart was still racing. I felt as if I had been kidnapped, yet I was sitting in the most luxurious space I had ever seen in my life. The leather seats were soft, there was a faint perfume scent, and the sound system played a soft old jazz tune. I looked over. Beatrice remained silent. She pulled a handkerchief embroidered with the letter L from her pocket, gently wiped her glasses, and then softly spoke. "Are you afraid of me?" I paused. "No. It's just, I don't understand what's happening." She smiled lightly, a slow, refined smile. "Not understanding is good. There are many things that, if you understand them too early, you won't dare take the next step." The car turned into the Bel Air neighborhood, where villas lay hidden behind iron gates and perfectly manicured hedges. I swallowed hard. We passed through a private security gate. A camera scanned the license plate, and the gate opened automatically. Inside was a shiny cobblestone driveway, lined on both sides by towering palm trees. At the end of the path was a pristine white mansion with a vaulted roof, golden lights reflecting like moonlight. When the car stopped, a woman in a black uniform stepped out and opened the door. "Welcome, Miss Langston." Beatrice merely nodded slightly. "Thank you, Clara. This is Serena Blake. Prepare the guest of honor suite." My eyes widened. "Guest of honor?" The other woman nodded, her smile appropriate. "Yes, ma'am." We stepped into the house, and I had to take a deep breath. The mansion was like a living museum. High ceilings, glittering crystal chandeliers, the walls covered in antique paintings. A soft piano melody played somewhere. The air was faintly scented with lavender and cedarwood. "My God," I whispered. Beatrice chuckled softly. "You haven't seen everything yet." She walked slowly, leaning on her cane, each step heavy yet steady. I followed, mesmerized. Down a long corridor, we stopped before a gigantic painting. A black woman in a white dress, standing in front of a factory gate with hundreds of workers behind her. "Me," Beatrice said softly. "The first day I bought my first factory in Texas." I was 32 that year. I looked at the painting. "Are you a real doctor?" "Yes, a doctor of economics. But don't let degrees fool you. This world is not built on knowledge, but on leverage. Whoever knows how to use leverage wins." The statement sent a chill down my spine. Clara led me up to the second floor. My room was larger than our entire old apartment in Baldwin Hills. A white bed, silk curtains, a balcony overlooking a rose garden. The bathroom even had a brand new robe, still with the tag attached. I stood there, unable to believe this was real. An hour ago, I was abandoned on the side of the road. Now I was in the mansion of one of the wealthiest people in Los Angeles. When Clara left, I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. I didn't know whether I should be grateful or terrified. The next morning, when I woke up, sunlight flooded the room. On the bedside table was a new outfit, a cream-colored dress, low-heeled shoes, and a small note. "Breakfast at 8 a.m. Don't be late. BL." I changed and walked down to the hall. Everything was so quiet that I could clearly hear the wind rustling through the tree leaves outside the window. Ms. Langston was sitting at the long dining table, wearing a gray gown with a pearl-studded collar. In front of her was a cup of tea and the morning newspaper. "Sleep well?" she asked without looking up. Yes, thank you. Call me Beatrice." I sat down. The breakfast wasn't as luxurious as I had imagined. Just toast, boiled eggs, fruit, and a glass of orange juice. Beatrice folded the newspaper. "Serena, I know more than you think." My heart clenched. What do you know?" "That your husband, Jamal, mortgaged all the assets in your name without your consultation. That the Malibu contract bears your digital signature, but that signature is not yours." I was stunned. "How do you know?" "Because I have people in that bank." She sipped her tea, her voice as calm as if discussing the weather. "And because I was betrayed, just like you." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. There was no trace of blindness in them. "Men like Jamal, I've met hundreds. They think money is a permanent pass, but money doesn't save anyone from the truth. I can help you, if you truly want it." I quietly asked, "Help? How?" "By getting back your dignity. And more." She placed a thick envelope on the table and slid it towards me. Inside were copies of bank statements, mortgage contracts, and photos of Jamal with another young woman, in the office that I instantly recognized, the very office downtown where I had occasionally visited. I gripped the envelope tightly. He's cheating?" Beatrice tilted her head. "Oh no. Worse. That girl is his lawyer. They are preparing the divorce papers. You will lose everything if you sit still." The room suddenly turned ice cold. I felt as if I had just stepped into a courtroom where I was the defendant who had never committed a crime. Beatrice stood up, leaning on her cane. "I can show you how to fight, but in exchange, one day, I will need you to do something for me." She turned her back, walking slowly toward the window. "Nothing is free, Serena. Not even salvation." I sat motionless. Her words dripped into my mind, heavy and chilling. "Do you need more time to think?" she asked, without turning around. I took a deep breath. I have nothing left to lose, Beatrice. If you can truly help me regain my dignity, I will do it. She smiled faintly. Good. That is the answer I was waiting for. She turned back, her face angled in the morning light streaming through the window. From now on, don't cry anymore, Serena. When people take everything from you, don't beg. Learn how to take it back, one piece at a time. That afternoon, I sat in the mansion's library, a room filled with the scent of old paper and oak. In front of me were stacks of documents Beatrice provided, statements, contracts, receipts, email transcripts. I looked at them all, then looked up. Ms. Langston's eyes were still watching me, cold yet bright as diamonds. I understood then. I hadn't been saved. I had just been recruited. How? I asked, my voice still trembling. Publicly, Ms. Langston replied concisely. He's playing a political game, trying to earn respect in the tech world. So we attack the very thing he craves most, reputation. We will make his name synonymous with corruption and lies. But how can we? No one believes me. He has locked down everything. Belief is not important, she said, her eyes sharp as knives. What's important is that people talk about it. His name must be everywhere. We need a wave of public opinion large enough that even his patrons can't shield him. She paused, looking right through me. Tomorrow, there is a charity event downtown, at the Beverly Hilton. All the city's elite will be there. Politicians, businessmen, officials. Your husband will be speaking. That is your chance. What do I have to do? Go there, she said slowly, and ask him one question, in front of everyone. A question he cannot answer. What question? You'll know when you get there. She pursed her lips into a smile. Now prepare. Estelle will bring you a dress. You must appear perfect. You must show them you are not broken. You must walk in like a queen. I left Miss Langston's office with a vague unease mixed with a surge of adrenaline. I didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing I knew for certain. I would not be a victim anymore. I would fight. Estelle truly made good on her promise. She brought exquisite, perfectly tailored evening gowns. She did my hair and makeup herself, gently curling my locks, emphasizing my eyes, and keeping my lips understated. When I stood before the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman in the mirror looked back at me, calm, sharp, ready. Malik drove me to the gala venue. Outside the hotel, the evening gowns, tuxedos, flashbulbs, background music. Everything sparkled like a stage. I stepped out, holding my head high. Every step felt like walking on a thin, taut wire. People recognized me. Whispers arose, eyes darted towards me, and then quickly looked away. No one came near. I walked into the hall, crystal chandeliers, elegantly set banquet tables. It all felt like a backdrop for someone else's life, not mine. I saw Jamal. He was on stage, surrounded by officials and businessmen, speaking into a microphone with a self-satisfied look that made me choke up. He finished. The applause was deafening. He stepped down, heading towards the exit. My chance. I blocked him right in front of the door. "Jamal!" I said loudly. He flinched and turned around. When he saw me, he froze for a beat, then his face contorted with anger. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "Tell me, Jamal," I said calmly, looking straight into his eyes. "By what right did you sell my mother's apartment?" The air froze. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Jamal turned ashen. He opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. And as if she had been waiting, Sienna stepped out between us. She gently pulled Jamal aside by the arm, then turned to the crowd, her voice loud and clear. "Don't mind her. She's drunk. She doesn't know what she's saying. She has mental issues." She pulled out her phone from her clutch. "See for yourselves." She pressed a button. The phone speaker played a slurred, drunken voice. My voice. The screen showed a video clip. I was sitting at a party table, laughing crudely, speaking incoherently, and singing aimlessly. I recognized it instantly. My nephew's birthday party at the community center a few weeks ago. I had had a bit too much to drink that night, but I did nothing wrong. I was just having fun with family and friends. Sienna stopped the video, looking around. See? She can't even remember last night. Why would any of you think she understands legal papers? The silence this time was no longer tense, but cold and judgmental. Someone snorted. A sneer broke out somewhere. A few headshakes. My face burned with humiliation. I wasn't just embarrassed. I was made a spectacle. Sienna smiled victoriously. You see who she is, don't you? A miserable, drunken woman trying to destroy the life of a successful man. Don't believe her. She's making it up. The crowd dispersed, turning their backs on me as if avoiding a plague. No one wanted to be involved. I stood there alone in the hall, crushed. I don't remember how I got out. The laughter and whispers clung to me out onto the porch like a swarm of bees. I hugged myself against the cold wind, watching cars stream by, wanting only to disappear. Just then, the familiar black sedan glided up, stopping as smoothly as a breath. Malik stepped out and opened the rear door. No questions, no comfort, just waiting. I got into the car. The entire ride back to Miss Langston's property, we were silent. The plan failed. No, I failed. I had fallen back into the role of the victim, this time in front of the whole city. The next morning, new blows struck. First was the call from my boss, Mrs. Harland. Her voice was cold and procedural. Serena Blake, good morning. Due to the current situation and the risk to the company's reputation, management has decided to suspend you indefinitely, without pay. But that's not true, I quickly said. It's a slander. I don't know and I don't want to know, she cut me off. We run a serious business, not a venue for resolving domestic disputes. The papers will be delivered. Goodbye. The line went dead. On paper, it was suspension. In reality, it was termination. I called my only close friend in the department. The phone rang long. No one picked up. An hour later, a text message arrived. Serena, sorry, I can't talk right now. And please don't call me again. I have a family and young children. I don't want trouble. In just one night, I had become an outcast. Jamal and Sienna turned me into a pariah. That evening, Miss Langston called me up. She was angry, but her anger was directed squarely at me. You are weak. She threw each word at me as I entered. I put the weapon in your hand, you let him drop it, and then you let him use that same weapon to strike back. You stepped into the ring and gave up after the first punch. But what else could I have done? I said softly. You should have prepared for the counterattack, she snapped. Didn't you know your husband? Didn't you know how far he was willing to betray you? The signature forgery is now an empty threat. Thorne checked. The experts in the city have been bought. They will conclude the signature is genuine. They will say you signed while under the influence and now simply don't remember. Last night's video is the perfect piece of the puzzle. The case will be closed before it even opens. I've lost. Her words were cruel, but not wrong. I sank into the chair, feeling every path was blocked. The court, the police, public opinion, all leaned toward Jamal. So, is this the end? I blurted out. For the weak, yes, she said coldly. For a fighter, not yet. There must be something he didn't anticipate. A small detail, a document he cannot manipulate, something that proves your indisputable right to the apartment. I closed my eyes, searching through every memory of the apartment. Then suddenly, an image flashed. My father's old blue folder. Inside, he kept all the most important documents: birth certificates, degrees, the private apartment privatization agreement, and the certificate of inheritance. The originals, with genuine signatures, seals, watermarks. Jamal couldn't fake those things. I have it. I opened my eyes. The originals. The contract and the certificate of inheritance. With those, any decent lawyer will expose the fake sale contract. Where? She immediately asked. At my family's old cabin in the Santa Monica Mountains. My father always kept important papers there. He didn't trust keeping them in the city apartment, saying it was easily burglarized. Good, she nodded. This is the chance. But you must act quickly and silently. No one must know where you are going, especially your husband. That night, I set out. Malik drove me to the edge of the residential area and stopped the car. You have 2 hours, he said tersely. I will wait right here. If you don't return, I leave. Ms. Langston doesn't like her people getting caught in foolish situations. I nodded. I crossed the dark and deserted roads of an old resort area. My family's cabin sat right on the edge of the woods, a small, rickety wooden house where my entire childhood passed by, with fishing trips and family gatherings, eating peach pie under the stars. There was no electricity here and no running water. Jamal hated the place, calling it a shack. We hadn't returned for years. The tall fence my father built long ago was now leaning precariously. The gate was secured with a rusty latch. I had to climb over, scraping and burning my hand, but I ignored it. The fear of being caught urged me on. The main door was also locked. I walked around to the back, trying every window. The one overlooking the garden yielded. The old wooden frame groaned and popped open. I squeezed inside, inhaling the stale, dust-heavy air. I turned on the flashlight on the phone Ms. Langston had given me. The beam swept across the room, awakening sharp memories. The sofa covered with a faded blanket, the bookshelf, the round table. Everything was still in its place. The file folder I needed had to be in my father's study, in the bottom drawer of the desk. I stepped into the small room. Everything was the same. I pulled hard on the heavy drawer. Beneath a pile of old newspapers, it was there. The familiar blue folder. My hands shook with relief. I opened it. Everything was accounted for. The certificate of inheritance, the privatization agreement, all bearing genuine seals and my parents' signatures. I held the ace card. With these documents, Jamal was the fraud. I had just stood up to leave when I accidentally stumbled. My foot pressed against a floorboard that made an unusual sound and shifted. I froze. I shone the light down. That board wasn't secured. I had never noticed it before. Curiosity got the better of me. I wedged my nail into the edge of the board and lifted it. Beneath was a hollow space, a hiding spot, and in the hollow was a fireproof safe the size of a shoebox. I was stunned. Dad never told me about this safe. Maybe it held some family heirlooms? A 4-digit combination lock, the simple kind. I tried my birth year. Click. My dad's. Click. My mom's. Click. No luck. I tried the year they married, 1975. The safe opened. I shone the light inside, expecting to see cash or jewelry. No cash, no gold, only 2 neatly stacked bundles of papers and 2 foreign passports. I picked up the passports. One had Jamal's photo, the other was Sienna's. The passports were brand new, issued exactly 1 month ago. They were planning to flee. A cold rush ran down my spine. I put the passports aside and opened the top bundle of papers. They were various licenses, technical drawings, and approval documents. I didn't fully understand them, but the forms bore the seal of the city's Architectural Commission. The documents related to the construction of a shopping complex on the outskirts, the exact project Jamal was obsessed with. Then I flipped to the final page. The key permit for construction commencement. In the section for the approval representative on behalf of the central supplier was a signature. I held the light close, and a sudden chill swept over me. It was my signature. More precisely, it was the digital signature I used in the company's electronic document system. Next to it was the seal of my department. The blood drained from my face. The paper trembled in my hand. This was not just an escape plan. This was a vile and cruel conspiracy, a multi-million-dollar fraud involving urban land and construction contracts. Jamal wasn't just stealing my apartment to pay debts. He was piling a massive fraud operation onto my head. If the case broke, all traces would lead to me, to my signature on the core permit. He would take the money and flee with his mistress, while I would face years in prison. Panic surged, swallowing me whole. This was far more terrifying than losing my home or public humiliation. This was a direct threat to my freedom and my entire life. I grabbed the phone. I had to call someone. But who? Miss Langston? To confess that I had stumbled upon something even dirtier than the mess before? The police? They wouldn't bother to listen. Only one name popped into my mind. The only relative who still seemed to be on my side. The only person I could unconditionally trust. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number. Hello? Someone's sleepy voice answered the line. Keisha, I rasped, choking with fear. Keisha, it's me. I need you. Right now. A few seconds of silence hung in the air, broken only by Keisha's tired breathing. Serena, God, where are you? What is it? Your voice? I spoke quickly, barely audible, my eyes sweeping the cabin's dark window as if afraid someone was lurking. I don't have time to explain everything over the phone. We have to meet immediately. It's a matter of life and death. What? I don't understand. Jamal said that you ran away, that you're having problems. Jamal is lying. I cut her off, my voice trembling but firm. He's lying about everything. Keisha, he's setting me up. He wants to send me to jail. Please meet me. Don't tell anyone. Not Mom, not friends, especially not him. I heard Keisha take a deep, frightened breath. Okay. Where are you? In 1 hour, at the all-night diner on Sunset Boulevard. You know the place? Small, empty this time of night. I know it. I'll be there. Serena, hang in there. I hung up, stuffed the phone into my pocket, and grabbed the blue folder with the apartment documents and the bundle of fraudulent papers. I climbed back out the window, somehow managed the fence, and practically ran back to the meeting point with Malik. We met in the empty diner, heavy with the smell of coffee and pastries, a historic spot where civil rights activists once gathered. Keisha was sitting at the most discreet table, constantly glancing at the door. Seeing me, she jumped up. Serena, what happened? You look terrible. I sank into the booth, placing the 2 bundles of files on the table. My hands were still shaking. Keisha, we don't have much time. I pushed the blue folder towards her. These are the apartment originals. With this much, I can prove the sale contract is fake. Keisha sighed in relief. Thank God. Then it's over. Let's go find a lawyer. Wait. I stopped her. I opened the second bundle, spreading out the fake permits. This is the real bomb. Look. Keisha leaned in, reading for a long time, her eyes lost between the blueprints and the seals. Then she shook her head. What is this? A scam, a massive construction fraud, and here, I tapped the last page, my digital signature. He stole it from my work system. He's dumping everything on me. He stole the apartment to run away with the money, and I'll stay here to face the music. And this, their foreign passports. Everything is ready. Keisha looked at the signature, then the passports, and her face went pale. She looked up, horrified. My God, Serena. But how could he? Why? He's not a monster. He is a monster, Keisha. A big one, I said emotionlessly. And I'm stuck. If I take the apartment documents to a lawyer now, he'll use the other bundle to strike back. I'll be handcuffed within the day. I have no way out. Keisha was silent, holding her head, clearly calculating. Suddenly she looked up. There is someone. My UCLA classmate, Trey. Have I told you about him? He's a sharp lawyer in San Francisco now, with his own firm. No ties to our city, no debts to the prosecutors or judges here. Plus, he owes me a favor. I looked at her, a glimmer of hope. You think he will help? I'm sure, Keisha said urgently. We'll do this. You can't keep these papers. It's too dangerous. Give them to me. I'll call Trey today, explain everything. Tomorrow morning, I'll take the earliest flight, bring them straight to him. He'll start working immediately, connecting with the federal authorities. They'll put pressure on the local guys. No one will dare to cover it up anymore. And while the files are with Trey, they are absolutely safe. Jamal can't reach them. The plan sounded logical. Handing the evidence to an independent lawyer outside the city network was the only move, and who else would I trust more than my own sister? Are you sure, Keisha? Is this dangerous for you? Don't be silly, Keisha wiped away tears. You're my sister. I won't let that bastard destroy you. Give them to me. She quickly gathered all the sensitive documents into her large tote bag. She handed me back the blue folder containing the apartment files. You keep this one. Keep it tight. Only use it when Trey gives the signal. For now, the priority is getting the evidence to safety. Okay, go immediately. Call me back when you reach San Francisco. I hugged her tightly. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you. Everything will be fine, she whispered. We'll get to the bottom of this. Returning to Ms. Langston's house, I finally managed to sleep for the first time in days. I hid the apartment file folder under the mattress, then fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. It was as if the nightmare had finally retreated. But I woke up to frantic, demanding knocking. Not on my room door, but the main entrance. It was still early. I heard Estelle's footsteps down the hall. Then a deep, decisive male voice rang out. My heart plummeted. I quickly put on my robe and walked out. 3 men stood in the hall. 2 in police uniforms, 1 in plain clothes, his face grim and hard as stone. Ms. Langston was already present, dressed in a formal dressing gown, looking at the uninvited guests with an icy gaze. What is the meaning of this? She demanded. The man in plain clothes held up his badge. Chief Detective Hayes, Federal Anti-Corruption Task Force. We have a warrant to search this house, and an arrest warrant for citizen Serena Marie Blake. On what grounds? Ms. Langston asked, her voice icy. In service of an investigation into large-scale fraud and document forgery, the detective replied, looking directly at me, frozen in the doorway. Serena Blake, you are under arrest. 2 police officers stepped forward. 1 bent my arms behind my back, the handcuffs clicking shut like cold fire across my wrists. Everything happened in slow motion. We also received a very specific tip regarding the location of documents to be seized. The team leader continued, They are right inside the house. He nodded. His men brushed past Miss Langston and headed straight into the living room. Just a minute later, an officer returned, holding up the blue file folder, the exact bundle of apartment originals. But how? Ms. Langston looked at the detective, her eyes darkening slightly. What does this mean? It means, he smirked, your guest is not so simple. Not only did she sign the fake permits for a multi-million-dollar project, she also kept the original apartment documents, the property she supposedly sold, to prepare for blackmailing her husband. It all fits perfectly. They escorted me out the door. Humiliation, fear, shock, all blended into a bitter lump in my throat. As I was led down the steps, Detective Hayes pulled out his phone and called someone. Yes, everything is fine. We have the subject contained. Both the person and the documents are secured. Thank you for the anonymous tip about the exact location. Very helpful. I was pushed into the patrol car. As the door slammed shut, I managed to glance back at the porch and froze. From the corner of the house, Detective Hayes slowly walked toward a black sedan parked not far away. Next to the car was a young man, sharply dressed in an expensive suit, the lawyer from San Francisco, Keisha's friend. But he did not look like someone who had come to rescue his friend's sister. He stood there smiling confidently. The detective approached and shook his hand firmly. They exchanged a few short words, then both laughed. The man nodded his thanks, pointing toward the house, toward the window frame where I had just been led away. He was thanking the police and pointing at me. In that instant, all the horrific pieces slid into place. There was no lawyer friend. There was no rescue plan. Keisha never flew to San Francisco. She never called her classmate. She called Jamal. She handed everything over to him. She told him exactly where I had hidden the last evidence of my innocence. She sold me out. My own sister. Why? The car began to move. The figure of the lawyer receded in the window frame. Inside me, there was only a burnt, frigid wasteland. This wasn't a trick. This was betrayal, the meanest, most contemptible kind of betrayal one human can inflict on another. The interrogation at the Federal Task Force unit was long and humiliating. Detective Hayes acted as if my guilt was already a settled matter. He pushed the pile of fraudulent documents toward me, poking his finger at my digital signature. "Confess, Blake. Everything will be easier. Tell us which unknown parties you partnered with to run this fraud scheme. Who was the insider at the factory? Who helped you get the seal?" I remained silent. What was there to say now? Every word was meaningless. They had already written the script. My role was the criminal. The evidence appeared incontrovertible. Papers with my digital signature, the original apartment deed I was accused of keeping for blackmail. Everything looked logical and tightly sealed. Jamal and Keisha had calculated every step. 2 days later, unexpectedly, a sergeant opened my cell door. "Blake, you're released on bail." Someone posted the bond. I stepped out into the daylight, squinting. Mr. Thorne was waiting at the gate, his face even longer than usual. "Ms. Langston posted bail," he said curtly, opening the car door. "Get in." On the way back to the familiar fortress, he updated me. "The situation is very bad. The charges are heavy. They are holding the documents your sister handed over. She is the key witness. She will testify that you personally gave her those papers, that you were panicked and asked her to hide them. Naturally, as an exemplary citizen, she immediately reported it to the police." "But that's a lie!" I flared up. "A lie backed by evidence in court will be called the truth." Thorne cut me off. "Your signature is on the documents. The motive, according to them, was to seek revenge on your husband and profit from it. The chances of them winning this case are almost absolute. The sentence you face could be up to 10 years. 10 years. The number echoed hollowly in my mind. 10 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Ms. Langston waited for me in the living room. She didn't scold. She was calm, and that was more terrifying than any rage. "Stop crying," she said as I collapsed, unable to hold back the tears. "Tears won't help the case. You wanted to believe your sister. You have seen the price. Now stop the self-pity. It's time to think." She waited for me to catch my breath. "Court is no longer an option. We will lose. We must take a different route. Your husband set up this scam because he needs money. A lot of money. Not just to run away. He owes someone, and that debt is burning his feet. We need to find out who he owes and why. We need to find the one thread we can pull to unravel this entire mess." "But how?" I asked desperately. "Not you," she replied decisively. "But I know who can." She took out her notepad, tore off a sheet, and wrote a name and phone number. "His name is Trey Wallace. He used to be the best investigative journalist in the city. He once dug into your husband's past. Back then, Jamal was new to the investment firm, already involved in a few land deals. Trey was close to breaking the story, but was pushed out by Sienna Landry and her father, District Attorney Victor Landry. He was fired, his reputation slandered. Since then, he's been scraping by with odd jobs, writing ad copy. He hates your husband to the core, and he needs money. Call him. Tell him I sent you. Trey Wallace met me at a rundown bar where dim yellow light flickered on the edge of Venice Beach. The man was around 50, his eyes tired but sharp, wearing a threadbare tweed jacket, smelling faintly of cigarettes and long-standing failure. He sat and listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, he looked at me for a long time and then said, "I know this story, at least the beginning." I knew Jamal was a thief, but I didn't think he'd go this far. "And your sister?" He shrugged. "Oh, quite a family. Will you help?" I clung to hope. "Ms. Langston will pay generously." He smiled wryly. "I still have my daughter's USC tuition loan to pay off. So yes, I accept. Where do we start?" "With the money," he replied. "Figure out why he needs a huge sum of money, and so quickly." The following days were submerged in work. Trey leveraged his old contacts from his LA Times days, squeezing out every bit of Jamal's financial secrets. We sat for hours in his smoke-filled apartment, old newspapers piled like mountains, going through bank statements, credit history, and transaction records. A dark picture emerged. The Malibu villa was just the tip of the iceberg. Jamal was living beyond his means: watches, suits, resorts, gifts for Sienna, all on credit. The debt to the bank was enormous, but even that didn't explain his frantic urgency and the stupid level of risk he was taking. "There's something else here." Trey tapped his pen on a bank statement copy. "Look at this." Besides the official loans, there are large, periodic transfers to the same account on the same day every month, an anonymous account under a shell company name. This isn't a loan. This is blackmail money. "Blackmail?" I repeated. "Who is blackmailing him?" "Someone who knows something that could kill his career faster than debt," Trey mused. "Something worse than stealing. We need to find the real owner of the account, but it's nearly impossible. We hit a wall. Trey followed every lead, but the trail went cold. The tracks were completely erased. I was desperate. I replayed everything from the past few weeks, trying to catch a clue. Suddenly a tiny detail, one I had almost dismissed at the time, surfaced. The day I was abandoned at the bus stop. Ms. Langston's driver, Malik. When he opened the car door, the smell of cigarette smoke wafted through. It was strangely pungent and sharp. I also saw a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, black wrapper, with a gold emblem. I had never seen that brand before. I told Trey about it. "It's probably silly," I said. "In this business, there are no silly details," Trey countered. "Black pack, gold emblem, sounds like a rare premium brand." For the next 2 days, we tailed Jamal, taking turns sitting in Trey's car outside the investment company headquarters in Century City. It was boring, exhausting. Jamal went in and out, met a few people. Nothing stood out. On the 3rd day, it was my shift. The sky had darkened. I sat in the car, sipping a cup of cold paper coffee. Jamal walked out of the building, alone, clearly agitated. He glanced around nervously. Just a minute later, a man in a gray coat approached. They talked briefly. Jamal pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase and handed it to the man. The man stuffed the envelope into his pocket without counting, turned, and walked away quickly. The blackmailer. I grabbed my phone to take a picture, but it was too dark, and the man moved too fast. I opened the car door and ran after him, maintaining a distance. The man turned into a quiet alley, stopping beside a parked car. It wasn't Miss Langston's black limousine, just a normal, dark-colored sedan. He opened the passenger door and got in. The driver's door opened. A person stepped out, pulled out a cigarette pack, and lit one. Under the streetlights, I clearly saw the cigarette pack, black wrapper with a gold emblem. Malik, Ms. Langston's driver. He took a final drag of his cigarette, flicked the butt onto the ground, and passed another envelope through the window. The man took it, and the car immediately sped away. I stood behind the tree, feeling like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. The picture was gradually becoming clear, so monstrous that my mind wanted to deny it. Miss Langston, the one who saved me. The patron, the one who ignited my hope. She hadn't just helped. She was the director. She was pulling the strings at both ends. The blackmailer drove Jamal to desperation, forcing him to walk right into her trap, to work for her. The driver coincidentally appearing at the bus stop to pick me up turned out to be her man. This wasn't salvation. This was a game, a cruel, macro-level game in which Jamal was the target, and I, Serena, was merely the weapon. The pawn pushed forward to take the opponent's king. Ms. Langston used me to settle an old score with Jamal. I stood hidden behind the tree for a long time, even after both cars disappeared. The late afternoon air was cold enough to tear at my lungs, yet I felt almost nothing. I was numb inside. My sister's betrayal shattered my trust in family. Ms. Langston's manipulation crushed my belief in salvation. I was alone, completely alone, surrounded by enemies and puppet masters in the dark. What happened to me was no accident. The humiliation, the arrest, the despair, all were pieces of someone else's cold plan. A pure, icy anger filled the void in my heart. Anger at Jamal, anger at Keisha, and now, anger at Miss Langston. I was exploited. My pain was turned into a game. My weakness was dissected. I wasn't an ally. I was merely a tool. I didn't call Trey. I flagged down a taxi, the first time I paid for myself, using the petty cash Trey had given me. I gave the address for Miss Langston's estate. I needed to look her straight in the eye. I needed a confrontation. I burst into the house, ignoring Estelle's stunned look. Ms. Langston was sitting in the living room, holding a book open. She looked up. There was no hint of surprise in her eyes. It was as if she knew I was coming, as if she was waiting. "You knew everything," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "Yes," she replied, setting the book down, calmly removing her glasses. "So what?" That calm, indifferent tone ignited a fire in my chest. "So what?" I screamed. "You played me!" "You orchestrated this whole spectacle, the blackmail, the rescue at the bus stop. You knew Jamal would do something stupid, and you pushed him to the brink. You used me to destroy him." "Correct," she repeated, her voice unchanged. She stood up, walking to the bar to pour a drink. "The driver was just a detail. The goal was to eliminate Jamal, and you were the weapon, the most effective weapon possible, an aggrieved, trampled wife." "Perfect. Why?" I croaked, feeling my strength abandon me. "Why did you do this to him? And to me?" She took a sip, looking at me. A sliver of memory flickered in her eyes. "Years ago, when your Jamal was a low-level assistant to a big shot, he helped his boss take over a small but very promising factory. My factory. The first thing I built with my own hands after moving from a poor rural area to the city. They starved it out, buying it for a pittance. I lost everything. I swore that one day I would destroy them. His boss died of cirrhosis. And your husband? He thought he had become a big shot, he forgot. But I did not. Everything clicked into place then. A revenge plot. Long-term, cold, calculated. And I had accidentally gotten caught up in it. "I was just the perfect tool," I said bitterly. "You became the perfect tool," she corrected me. "And I gave you a chance, not just to retaliate, but to become stronger. I taught you how to fight. Or would you rather continue sitting at that bus stop and crying?" She was right. Ironically, she was right. Ms. Langston had dragged me out of the victim role, pushing me into the warrior role, even if it was for her own objective. "Now what?" I asked, my voice subdued. The tears, the shouting, were over. "Now that I know everything, do you send me away? Do you let them throw me in jail?" The corner of her mouth twitched slightly. "On the contrary. Now that you know everything, you are more dangerous. You have rage. You have motive. Now you will fight not for an apartment, but for yourself. That motivation is the strongest." She walked over to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thin file folder, tossing it onto the desk in front of me. "Your husband and his mistress have a very strong backer, Sienna's father, District Attorney Victor Landry. As long as he is in office, you have no chance. He will shield his daughter and his future son-in-law. All your petitions, all your evidence will shatter before his office door." I opened the folder. Photos and document copies. In the photos, D.A. Landry was receiving envelopes from notorious businessmen. The documents were wire transfers to his shell company. Evidence, knockout evidence, enough to secure several long sentences. "Where did you get these?" "I have eyes and ears everywhere," she cut me short. "This is the key to your freedom. Go see Landry immediately. Put it on the table and bargain. Bargain for what? The dismissal of all charges against you." The closure of the case due to lack of evidence. In exchange, you give him this folder and disappear. You will have to forfeit the apartment. That is the price of freedom. Go now. Malik will drive you an escape. Ugly, unfair, but an escape. To save my life, save my freedom, by sacrificing everything else, my home, my job, my past. An hour later, I was sitting in the waiting room of the district attorney's office. The secretary hesitated, but I simply said, "Tell Mr. Landry I have a file from Beatrice Langston." 30 seconds later, the office door flew open. Landry, a burly man, solemn, authoritative, stood to greet me. "What do you want?" he growled. I walked up to his desk and spread the file out in front of him. Photos, papers. He looked, his face turning from red with anger to ashen gray. He slumped into his chair. "This. What do you want?" His voice was breathless. "I want all charges against me immediately dropped," I said slowly. "Close the case due to lack of evidence." He was silent, looking back and forth between the pile of papers and my face. "Fine," he finally managed, "but surely that's not all? What else does Langston demand?" "Langston is not involved," I replied. "These are my terms." He raised an eyebrow. "Very well. Your terms." I paused for a beat, collecting my thoughts. This was the moment, an all-inclusive deal. Ms. Langston had set it up, freedom in exchange for silence and the apartment. It was logical. It was safe. I slowly gathered the photos and papers, putting them back into the folder. Landry watched, bewildered. "What are you doing?" he asked. I closed the folder, gripping it tightly in my hand. I looked him straight in the eye. "No," I said, my voice low but sharp as steel. "I am not bargaining." I turned my back and walked toward the door. "Stop!" he roared. "What are you planning to do?" I paused at the threshold, not looking back. I am going to do what I need to do. I walked past the reception desk, through security, and stepped out onto the street. I didn't return to the car where Malik was waiting. I walked in the opposite direction. I left everything behind. My tormentor, my treacherous sister, my puppet master. From this moment on, I was playing my own game. I walked along the street without a destination. The wind whipped at my face, but I didn't feel the cold. I was burning inside. The decision in the district attorney's office wasn't an impulse. It had grown day by day, from the moment my world began to collapse. Initially, I wanted justice. Then I wanted survival. But now, I wanted revenge. Complete, final. I turned into the first cheap coffee shop on Wilshire Boulevard, sat by the window, and pulled out my phone. I still had the stack of cash Trey gave me for expenses in my pocket. I ordered the strongest coffee and dialed his number. The plan was reckless. It had to operate with clockwork precision. Trey planted a small article in the LA Business Journal, "Foreign Investors Interested in Frozen Projects." The article mentioned HVTA, Capital Switzerland, and specifically eyeing the suburban shopping complex, the very project that dragged me into the vortex. "This is still too soft," Trey frowned. "We throw in a bigger bait, with a specific offer," I replied. To make the bait real, we needed cash. The next morning, Trey called, his voice still incredulous. "There's an anonymous transfer, $125,000. I simply smiled. Beatrice Langston. She couldn't resist the finale of the play she herself initiated. Trey activated the most reliable gossip line, the manager of a chatter-heavy salon on Rodeo Drive, where Sienna was a regular client. Half a day later, Sienna privately overheard that the Swiss party was ready to buy back the project rights at double the price to avoid complications and speed up progress, but they would only negotiate with the initial signatory from the factory side, which was me. Sienna took the bait. Greed overshadowed caution. That evening, Jamal called. "We have a deal. Huge money. Meet up." We set the meeting for 7 o'clock the next evening, a private conference room at the Beverly Hilton, staging the scene to look like a legitimate transaction. "They're hooked," Trey said. "Now we need people to play the Swiss delegation." We dissected every detail: the investor's appearance, the dialogue, the hiding spot for the recording devices. At 5 p.m., Jamal called back, his voice turning ice cold. "Change of location." "No hotel. Come to the factory. To your old office, 7 o'clock. Come alone. Bring all the documents, ID, and the notarized transfer papers. They'll wire the money. You get your cut in cash." "Why at the factory?" "You know why." Fewer prying eyes. Trey frowned. "A trap." "Don't go." I looked at him, my eyes filled with a cold emptiness. "We're still going. We're just changing the ending." "We don't need actors anymore," I said. "We need a real audience. Call this number. Say it's a message from Serena Blake. Tonight, at the West LA Manufacturing Hub, there will be a large-scale bribery transfer and a confession of massive fraud. The district attorney is involved." Then I took out a burner phone, opened a voice changer app, a desperate but worthwhile gamble. I called Jamal in a sobbing, panicked Keisha voice. He curtly confirmed everything. He had settled my sister's debt. The apartment deal was almost done. The cash was coming tonight. And when they crossed the border, he would silence the district attorney. I hung up, saving the recording. At 6:45, I stepped out of a taxi in front of the factory gate. The guard let me through. The wide yard was cold like a graveyard. Only the second-floor window was lit. I pushed open the office door. All three were present. Jamal by the window, Sienna perched on the desk chair, District Attorney Victor Landry sitting in the guest chair, his massive frame making the room feel cramped. "Came alone." "Good. Where are the documents?" Sienna scrutinized me from head to toe. I placed the notarized transfer folder down. Jamal snatched it, devouring every page. "Solid." "Where are the investors?" "Where is the money?" Sienna snapped. "They're here," I said softly. Floodlights on the factory roof blazed, bathing the yard in a cruel white light. Below, people had blocked all the exits. On one side, Trey stood with a cameraman, the lens pointing directly at the window. On the opposite side, 2 federal agents in sharp vests. "A trap!" Landry's face went pale. Jamal roared, lunging toward me. "I'll kill you!" I sidestepped, and he slammed into the filing cabinet. I pulled out the phone and played the recording. The sound of a sobbing Keisha, followed by Jamal's confident, malicious voice, bribing my sister, the apartment trick, the fraud, and the promise to silence the district attorney. The door burst open. Federal agents flooded in. "Freeze!" Federal Anti-Corruption Task Force. Landry straightened his back. "Do you know who I am?" "We do." "That's why we're here." Handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. Sienna shrieked, then turned and hit Jamal across the face. "You failure! You ruined everything!" Then she was pulled away. Jamal utterly collapsed, covering his head, also let out. The curtain fell on the play. A few weeks later, the sound of the drill outside the door suddenly sounded like music. The locksmith finished installing the 3rd most secure lock on the door of my apartment in West Hollywood. The old deadbolts lay discarded on a newspaper in the hallway. I stood by the window, looking out at the city. The apartment was mine, completely. The case against me was closed. Jamal and Landry, desperately trying to salvage things, turned to drowning each other. And Keisha finally put everything right. The phone rang. It was Mrs. Harland from the factory. "The appointment decision is signed. Monday, you will hold the head of planning position. I won't let you down. You saved the factory from a major collapse. This is the least we can do." In the hallway, the locksmith packed up his tools. "It's all done, ma'am. Maximum security." I took the new bunch of keys, heavy and solid. The cold metal under my fingers made me feel strangely sober. Everything was closed. I walked through hell and emerged as a different person. I lost my husband, lost my sister, lost faith in people. But I found myself again. I stand in my own home, and from now on, I am the one who decides who walks through this door. And that is the end of a story as taut as a wire. Betrayal, lies, and mental resilience. Serena has gone from a crushed victim to someone who sets the rules for her own life. But did she do the right thing? To take down a monster, she had to be tough, calculated, sometimes ruthless. Does the end justify the means? If you were in her place, what would you choose? To go all the way, risk everything, or accept a safe way out, leave and start over, allowing evil to escape the net? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. If this story touched you, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Thank you for accompanying us.